This is Joe Tucker. Welcome to the official podcast of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers, The Rule of Law, The Academy Speaks. Today, I'm in the University of Missouri School of Journalism, and I'm here with my very good friend, Randy Smith. Randy?
Yes?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm good. I've been here the entire week with you and some of journalists in exile. And this week I told the journalists that they are what we consider the fourth element, the fourth branch of government. We have the judiciary, we have the legislative, and we have the executive. But we also have journalists to keep us all in check. And that's why this program, and we're going to talk about the program, is important to the International Academy of Trial Lawyers, and it's important to the rule of law. First, why don't you tell us a little bit about JIE, the Journalists in Exile program?
Journalists in Exile started 2 years ago when we started noticing the number of journalists who were in this country legally in exile from this growing autocracy that was happening around the world. What can we do about it? Can we help them get to know this new country better? Can we help them return to the work that they do best, which is journalism? And we spent a great deal of time looking not only at the population, which was shocking to us. We realized that it wasn't just a few hundred, it was thousands of people who are here. And then the other thing is, what would we teach them? How would we, what would be the purpose of this program? And so we surveyed the fellows that we knew, those who were in exile, about 40 or 50 of them, and asked them, if we started such a program, what would you like to learn? What would you like to see the result of this be? And so we developed the program based upon the needs of those journalists in exile, which is, to get back into the game, get back into the field, get back to earning a living through journalism here in their new country.
Now, where are these journalists coming from?
They're coming from places that are often in the news, but not particularly well known by the American public. Afghanistan, Cuba, Ukraine. We have them from Vietnam, a lot from Central America and South America, Venezuela, Nicaragua, El Salvador, places like that, Haiti, places that I don't think a lot of Americans have traveled to or been to. And then there's a whole lot more in Eastern Europe and Russia, and also in South Asia. We had a fellow last year from Kashmir.
Yeah, I was particularly moved last year when I was speaking with one of the journalists, and you know how this resonated with me, how she literally swam to freedom. And she was being chased by government officials, made it to the ocean, was able to swim to a jet ski, which then brought her here to the program.
Yeah, that was Maria Delgado. Maria was probably one of the best known faces on television in Nicaragua for many, many years. She wasn't reporting difficult stories about the regime. She was reporting the news, what was happening every day. But even she became a target. And she became the subject of harassment, and so did her family. And it got to the point where she knew she was going to go to jail. And by the way, going to jail in these places is not like we see here in the United States, where we actually keep track of people in jail. People lose touch with those that go to jail, and they essentially disappear.
That's a word I heard common in speaking with some of the journalists yesterday, that they said in these countries, when family members, friends, or journalists go to jail, there's no communication with them, and the best you could hope to do was to be able to bribe a jail official to deliver a note. That's significant, and that's sad.
Yeah, sometimes the only time you hear from a relative maybe when you get a call from a hospital and say, we have someone here who we think is your loved one, they're deceased, and, frankly, they've been deceased for quite a while. It's a very heartbreaking situation. If you think about Argentina a few decades ago, Chile a few decades ago, when people literally, just for being in a protest march, were disappeared from the streets and never heard from again. A lot of young people were victims of this. In Nicaragua, it's been particularly true of the media. Everybody seems they have something like 200, 250 journalists who are practicing outside of Nicaragua right now.
If you don't mind, could you tell our listeners how the International Academy of Trial Lawyers came to be involved in the Journalists in Exile program?
Well, I consider the relationship with the International Academy to be one of the most valuable attributes our program has. And it was really through the relationship between one of the Academy members, who is also on our board, Pat Stevie. Pat Stevie discovered that Karen Burgess, the president a year ago, was interested in having a journalism part of the program there. And Pat told her a little bit about our program, and she said, yeah, I'd like to see it, see more of it. And she organized a program last year, actually our first year, and came here for the entire week, just as you were here this week, Joe. And it was one of those. She said, "Well, wow, this is something that we should get involved with." And she brought it back to the Academy, and the Academy has embraced it. And we've been fortunate. Our fellows are getting some of the top legal training you can get in America. It's like a mini law course in 1 week on everything in the U.S. And there's so much surprising for our fellows in all of this. Like, you have access to information. There's something here that we take for granted called due process. Many of these places, there's no such thing like that. You keep track of prisoners. The America does. And all of this information, a lot of it's available online. And there's so much stuff, not just about the criminal system, but about the civil system too, that's available to them. And the transparency of our system, of our government, is a cornucopia of opportunity for a journalist who are trying to figure things out.
Well, even from last year, and I was here last year, I spoke about the First Amendment. From some of the journalists were surprised that we had freedom of the press. And last year we had many answers to almost all of the questions that they asked. This year, when I kicked it off, I told the journalists that a lot of our answers would be humana, 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 because we in America are living in an unprecedented time, and some of them are genuinely scared with what is going on with the American administration now, and scared of being deported because they may speak out with something that may be of disinterest or not liked by the American government. How have you helped alleviate some of those concerns that they may have, that if they speak out here where we laud the press? It is, as I said, it's the fourth element.
Well, I think that, there isn't an easy answer for each member of our fellowship class, because they're in from various countries that are, we just heard this morning that the president had banned travel from a variety of different places, and banned all kinds of other ways in which to enter through, for example, education. So you have to kind of go through this one case by case. But in general, we encourage them to write and report freely, and to tell the truth to power about what's happening. A lot of the audiences for the stories that they're doing, because they're reporting in different languages, are overseas in their home countries. And so I think that they're not reporting on what's happening here in the U.S., pro or con. They're happening, by telephone and talking to people that they know back home about what's happening there. And while it may be controversial in Venezuela, it's not so here.
One thing that impressed me yesterday, and there were so many things that resonated as the students made their presentations about their story, was that they talked about not taking for granted the press and not taking for granted our freedoms. And I'm going to change gears a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your professional background, Randy, and where you come from.
Well, I've wanted to be in journalism since I was 12 years old and a paper boy for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune.
Those good old days of the paper boy.
Yeah, exactly. I delivered it on many cold mornings. But I went into journalism here at the Missouri School of Journalism and worked at several different places as a reporter and a senior editor and a columnist, and covered about everything under the sun, from legislature to courts to police and things of that nature. And then I landed at Kansas City Star, moved there from Los Angeles, my place I was at before. And I had a wonderful 30-year run there.
At the height of circulation, how large was the Kansas City Star?
Well, I mean, it was roughly around 300,000 daily and 400,000 on Sundays, and it often depended upon how well the Chiefs and the Royals were doing.
We're not going to get into a Chiefs-Eagles argument here.
Well, I'd probably lose that one.
40-20. But anyway, I digress. Let's continue to talk about what you did when you were with the Kansas City Star.
Well, I did a lot of different things, but primarily I was an editor there. Mm-hmm. Right away, I was involved in 1981 in the collapse of the Hyatt Skywalks, which was a new hotel at the time and a very popular destination for people who were, looking for a Friday or Saturday night pre-dinner destination to have drinks and do a little dancing and things of that nature. It had just been opened, and it was packed with people on the atrium floor. And overlooking it were two skywalks. And one skywalk collapsed into the second skywalk, which collapsed onto the dance floor and killed about 130 people instantly and injured hundreds more, both physically and psychologically. Our newsroom went into high gear. I was city editor for the Morning Kansas City Times. At that, we had an afternoon paper then called the Kansas City Star. And the first thing we did was we went out and found trying to find out what happened. There's no internet in those days. So we had to go down to City Hall, get the schematics, and then we did something we'd never done before. We hired two engineers from the University of Kansas to come over and help us look at these. And it was very apparent that it was a not only a design flaw, but also should have been caught by the building inspectors as well. So we were able to report the cause of the accident, that those beams that were holding up those skywalks were essentially being pulled apart instead of being pushed together. And we were able to report that a year before the federal government did. We reported on the next Monday, so this happened on a Friday night. The next thing we did is we did something else we had never done before. We followed around the building inspectors. We'd heard that they came into work late, left early, and oftentimes spent the in-between time in bars. And so after a lot of discussions about following someone around, we decided it was important to the community that we did that. We found that the rumors were true, and we had pictures of them coming in and out of bars and donut shops and other things like that. The city fired the inspectors as a result of that story and instituted a whole new inspection system in Kansas City, and it changed the way buildings were built. So the third thing that we did that was different about covering that story is we went out and said, gosh, if this happened at the Hyatt, what's been going on in the last 25 or so years? And we went around with those same engineers we used in the first example and discovered that many other places had the similar problems, whether it was elevators, other skywalk situations, all kinds of different things. And so those issues were brought to light and brought to attention. I think, we won a Pulitzer for that work. And by saying we nominated the entire staff for that work because it was truly a community effort.
Well, Randy, that takes me to another point. With the advent of the internet, Facebook, the quick news, do you see investigative journalism like that falling to the wayside where a substantial and substantive change was made based upon what you guys did in your investigation?
Well, the rise of the internet, probably the biggest thing has been we weren't changing fast enough from our business model standpoint. And so when I left the Star, there were over 300 journalists in the newsroom. I'm not sure how many there are today, but it's certainly less than 50. And this is true not just for the Kansas City Star, but for every newsroom, every metropolitan paper out there. They're significantly downsized. They've been sold to firms that may not have journalism as their primary mission. And so, it has impacted journalism, particularly not only investigative journalism, but also just keeping track of what's going on in your community. I mean, we used to have 2 people at each courthouse, or sometimes more, in City Hall, and we covered every little meeting, in the 8-county metro. Most people, I don't think, know what's happening in their local community. And, beyond the investigative reporting, which is timely, costly, takes a lot of manpower and a lot of work, a lot of lawyers to help us make sure we're doing things right, just the fact that that has disappeared off the radar, and people are just frankly not as informed in America as they used to be in just about 20 years ago.
Let's talk about the intersection between the news media and law. Where do you see the intersection? How can one help the other? That is, serious journalism and the law. How does one help the other here?
Well, I mean, throughout my career as an editor and later then as a professor at the Missouri School of Journalism, we didn't even talk about that, but lawyers have been a very significant part of what we do, whether it's helping form a new business, which we did here at the University Missouri School of Journalism. It was called Missouri Business Alert. I encourage people to subscribe to it. It's free. Get a great newsletter every morning. But helping us set that up, helping us review articles that we're doing, helping us defend ourselves from people who would like to stop us from reporting the news or would like to punish us from reporting the news. I think our professions are dependent essentially on the rule of law and the First Amendment. And there is a real synergy between the legal profession and the journalism profession. And we need your support for us to be able to do our job well.
What I was watching the press conference recently where a reporter from ABC asked the question and the respondent said, "That's a dumb question. That's you work for that ABC station. How does it make you feel, and what can the media do when it's being attacked by the people at the highest level of government when you have demeaning statements like that? What's your role?"
Our role is to just keep doing our job. Those kind of allegations are fairly common. They've been common throughout my entire career, which began back in the mid-'70s. And whether it's Richard Nixon or whoever it is, that we've never been great friends of those who are in power because we have to report on them. And that means writing about the positives and the negatives of their administrations. And so you just, from my standpoint, is just keep doing your job, keep reporting the news, and not let those threats undermine your First Amendment rights.
How do we know to differentiate many real news from what we'll say is fake news? We consume news in a different kind of way, and we consume information in a different kind of way, where we click on to Facebook and we click on the Twitter. And I jokingly made the remark today while one of the presenters was presenting, said, if I read on the internet, it must be true.
Well, trust but verify. I mean, I think you used to have organizations that you trusted where you went for news, and now people are getting their news from social media. I often say, have you checked that out? Have you verified what you're repeating? Just because a podcaster said it or you heard it somewhere else on social media, you need to check it out, because oftentimes what we're seeing on social media is actors who are more interested in promoting themselves, their political viewpoints, or some sort of state agenda.
Let's bring this back. I'm here with the Journalists in Exile program, and they're going to be continuing on for the next several weeks when the members of the Academy get finished this week. What is the goal for them when they're finished this program? What do you hope to instill them with?
Well, I would say there's a couple of things. One is that we hope that we instill a sense of community, that they can rely on each other and ask each other questions, and they know where to turn if they have questions about their status or whatever it might be. So a sense of community would be the first thing. Second thing is we want to see them get back to work and see them continue to improve their journalism skills. So last year, one of our fellows who was in the program, Roberson Alphonse, who was from Haiti and had been shot by gang members on his way to a radio station.
I think he was shot 21 times and survived.
Yeah, it was just amazing to see the car and the bullets there, and the fact that he survived that. He's still going through surgeries today, and I think this week he's having some of the bullet fragments taken out of his arm. But he's now a lecturer at Northwestern University, and he's doing journalism also. He has a daily radio program that's broadcast throughout Haiti that he does from his home in Chicago, and he also is writing for Le Noveliste, one of the newspapers there, on a regular basis. And
I was happy to see that he joined us here this week for a few days, and he and his beautiful wife Natalie are doing really well.
Yeah, they're doing great, and I mean that's so true of in fact, every one of the fellows. We have some like Hector, who's started his own business, and he's covering Latin America with a group of other Latin American exiles, and those stories are being printed and seen on the internet in a wide variety of places. Faisal Karimi from Afghanistan is just an amazing guy. He's now a lecturer in California at a university, but he also, since he was here, he started this university that's online for Afghans and particularly aimed at Afghan women, where education has been cut tremendously since the Taliban took over. But one of the journalists who's with us right now has helped him do that, and she's working on her PhD program. And she told me yesterday that some of the women actually climb into the mountains every week to get the signal, and then they get it downloaded, and then they can do their lessons from there. So that's amazing what they're doing. He also has the Afghan Women's News Network, where where they're reporting on news, and they have a group of women, anonymous reporters there in Afghanistan helping gather what's going on there in real time. So, I mean, each one of the fellows is doing something amazing with their lives, and they're moving forward and trying to make this world a little bit better place.
One of the things that they also said yesterday, and I want to repeat this, is that we can't take for granted the freedoms that we have here in America, because as they begin to erode, whether it's the press, whether it's attacks on the press, attacks on the judiciary, democracy is fragile. And I felt heartened to hear them say that we need to make sure that we stay aware and that we are not taking for granted these freedoms that we have.
Yeah, several of the fellows this year have said, we thought nothing would ever happen to the freedoms that we had. And that was only 6 years ago. And everything, including freedom of the press, was taken away from them. I go back to something Thomas Jefferson said kind of many years ago about the press. When he was asked, would he rather have a functioning government or a free press? And he said, without hesitation, a free press. And I think that is what keeps the vigorous debate about where we should go as a democracy alive and includes the participation of everyone.
Randy, I'm going to end on that, and I want to thank you very much for being with us today. And I want to thank you for letting the International Academy of Trial Lawyers be a part of this very important program.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's great to be with you.
Yeah. I'm Joe Tucker, President of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers, and this is The Rule of Law, The Academy Speaks. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll talk to you next week. Take care.